Greetings, readers and listeners. David Adler from JazzTimes here. Like a great many others, I watched the Tiny Desk performance by Tampa-born rapper Doechii, and I was floored, not only by Doechii herself, but also her virtuosic live band, all women of color, versatile top-tier players who clearly are fluent in the vernacular of jazz, something you could hear right away on the opening number. Now, being a guitar freak, I'm also by extension a bass freak, and this band had one Zuri Appleby. On Instagram, she's known as Her Highness of Lowness. I'd soon learned that Zuri also plays with the pop and R&B megastar Lizzo, and she was in fact playing bass at the Lizzo show that my wife and daughter attended in Manchester last year. So I continued reading up, and I found out that Zuri was also a sergeant in the Marine Corps, if I'm not mistaken, the first and only female bassist of color ever to play in the U.S. Marine Corps band. So that settled it. We had to book an interview. Here she is. Welcome, Zuri Appleby, and thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us at Jazz Times.
Hi,
You are,
David. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the
yeah.
beautiful intro.
So let's start with the Tiny Desk. We've all watched them, but very few of us have been in the room for one of them. Even fewer of us have been in the rehearsals and the planning and the logistics from beginning to end. Tell us a bit about the preparations, if you could, for that very intense 24 minutes of music and anything else you want to share about the Doechii experience.
First of all, yeah, it was definitely my first time as well. So it was an amazing first time. I had never been a part of any Tiny Desk performance. Been a fan of Doechii, but did not have any full understanding of like her skill set until I got to experience it in person. So we basically got the call to do it maybe 2 weeks prior. So to rehearsal starting. And we basically just got a very loose idea of just the set list, basically the songs, but we were going to reimagine them,
Yeah,
which we collectively did in rehearsals with everyone involved. So we were pretty much making arrangements all the way up until like the day before the last day of rehearsals. So it was it's only a week, which is not a lot of time, and then even less time when you're not actually like practicing everything for each day through the whole week.
right,
So being able to create, retain, recall, perform, and also not doing it with the in-ear mix. If anyone's familiar with that, a lot of times
right.
on shows we will use basically a direct feed to hear whatever levels we need to perform right. But in this setting, it was totally different, so much more intimate. We had to really just adhere to her voice. She didn't have a microphone in rehearsal, so we just basically were like, if we can't hear her voice, it's too loud. And that was just also just really intimate way to practice and create together. So yeah.
Right. So could you rehearse in the spot, like on site? Like, did you have time before the camera started rolling, or?
I would say we had time to basically like sound check and get all of our camera blocking.
Okay.
And so they allotted time for camera blocking as well as levels and for us to have time to run through. Um, but it was basically, like one run through and then the recording, which was one run through. And then that was what got posted.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
really smooth records. I mean, the musicians that we're all working with, everybody's so prepared and professional, including Doechii. So
Yep.
it was really smooth.
Now, is there a live band project kind of, was that like a one-off, or do you think like there's going to be more stuff down the road, or?
I hope so.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
hope
Of
so.
course. But you were right there with her. Like you were like, there's this just kind of like emotional investment, like in the material and reacting to things she was saying. And you were, I just noticed that you were kind of right there, really punctuating things, on the instrument and kind of creating, it wasn't just like you were clocking in and doing a gig, it seemed like.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Thank you
Yeah.
for noticing. I definitely I try to put the same care in every gig, but I mean that the camera was like I was right behind her, so there was no hiding. First of all,
Yes, that's
there's
right.
no hiding. I was right there, but also, I mean, honestly, like you said, she's so theatrical. I love her delivery. I love her energy. So it was very natural just to feed off of her energy, and
Yeah,
it was a fun time. It was authentic. I definitely have found myself being more emotive. I definitely used to be the person that's just like,
I see.
and sometimes I still will, like, depending on what's going on, like zone out. But in that instance, it just, the lights are on and it's just all going.
I was thinking about you as like part of a whole class of like side people in the business, working musicians, or going back to like the Funk Brothers, right? The Wrecking Crew, like session players who
Oh
made
yeah.
those great records. I have many friends doing Broadway gigs, long term, Broadway gigs, and on and on. So that's something I wanted to kind of highlight in this interview. And with that in mind, I wanted to ask you about the Lizzo gig. So what other aspects of like the touring circuit and life as a working musician on a really high profile level like that? What has that taught you and shown you?
Oh man, what a big question. Without being too long-winded, I mean, it's shown me how so much of what it takes, like, to survive or to like feel like you're able to handle or work well in those type of dynamics is like outside of the musicality. It's really a lot is that top tier level. A lot of people are like, oh, you'll never have to show how great you can play when it comes to like those gigs, but at the same time, um, you can hear how great somebody can play just off of one note, and like a lot of times. And
Yeah.
and I'm saying that to say you actually do need all those skill sets, because when all those different pressures are happening and all those other things are happening that are potentially can throw you off of what you're used to like create or perform the way or play the way that you feel comfortable, like so many of those things are not there at all. You really do need to have a really good handle on your playing, but also your ability to handle like those different stressors and all
Mhm.
those moving parts and changing time zones, and
Yeah.
maybe preferring management or not preferring management, or the people you work, just like any job. But it's definitely like so much of that, because that stuff, if you really don't love it, if you really don't like, just can't see yourself doing anything else, like it can wear on you even if you do love it. So
Mhm.
I've learned that knowing how to have personal boundaries, how to take care of yourself, how to get along well with others, how to work well under pressure, like just the things that I think everybody needs. Like, you just have to have them readily available at all times for your own well-being and for the functionality of the project. So
We'll segue again to another kind of musical experience, the Marine Corps Band. Just take us through kind of how your service played out and how much of music was a part of it.
I was basically in the program to be into the Marine Corps since like the last few years of high school.
Hmm.
Um, my dad was in the Marine Corps as well, so that even had my ear aware of that service branch. I wasn't necessarily, I'm more extracurricular activities type person, more like, I need to like do it, not just like regurgitate it. So school wasn't necessarily like my goal. I didn't want to really go there. I was like, physical was it. And I was like, also, there's a military band where you can get the schooling. Long story short, I pretty much went in knowing that I'd be in the band
I see.
starting out. So that was my initial goal, was, to be a Marine, but also to use that as an avenue to continue my music studies from high school and from
Yeah.
previous. So I took an audition. Basically, they place you on a whatever a scale of your playing abilities. Depending on that, if you're allowed to pick, where you want to go. So my first choice was New Orleans,
Mm.
because of the music. So everything was always geared around the music. I went to basic training, 3 months boot camp, Paris Island, just like every Marine. Then we went to combat training for um, a month out in the field, and then you go to your MOS school, which is your military occupation specialty school, which is basically, for me, it was School of Music, Armed Forces School of Music. So you have Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, and it's like 6 months of condensed, like 4 year studies condensed into 6 months, almost like, from performance to theory to conducting to computer
Hmm.
marching. So, and then auxiliary percussion, being that I'm a bass player. So, um, that was amazingly intense and awesome time. I mean, you can't even leave base for the first 3 months or even take off a uniform. So, like, all you have to do is just like nosedive and submerge yourself into the music. So that was amazing. And then from then on, I went into uh, my field, which was New Orleans, and I was in the band there. And it was after Katrina, just after Katrina,
Mm. Oh.
but was able to march in the Mardi Gras parades
Mm.
and to do so many like local performances. I met a lot of amazing musicians out there. So yeah, it was always music, but I still was an everyday Marine as well. I mean, you have to do rifle qualifications, you have to do pistol qualifications, you have to do swim qualifications, you have to do martial arts. You have to do physical fitness, assessments. So all of that was preliminary, and then on top of that, you have your job. So yeah, that was some of my experience. I loved it.
Right. And I see behind you the upright bass. So were you playing both? Were you in the Marines? Were you playing
I
both?
was. I
Yeah.
was absolutely, yes. I got to do because they have a wide variety of all different ensembles.
Okay.
Especially being bass, you just find yourself in so many different types of ensembles. So we got to do orchestral band. I got to do upright, on some songs if it had it. So yeah, it was lovely. And then we had jazz ensemble, so I got to swap out with upright. I
Right.
had a little electric upright. It wasn't that one I was looking around all the time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I would practice. So yep,
And had you played upright before all along?
I had played some in high school, but I actually initially started on violin.
Oh, okay.
And so I was in the orchestra that way. And then I added on bass later on. Like I started violin when I was like in fifth grade, and like maybe by seventh, eighth grade, I started bass. So when I got to high school, like I can't be in the orchestra playing both instruments. And they're like, pick one. So I was like, okay, so upright it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then as far as being it kind of speaks for itself, but if you want to say anything additional about being the first woman of color bassist in the Marine Corps band.
Yeah, it's like I didn't know at the time. I mean, in my head, I don't recognize all the history or not history that's been before me. So all I know is that I'm who I am. I know that I knew that I've always wanted to be somebody that was breaking expectations. That's something I
Hmm.
always knew that I really wanted to surprise people. Like, you thought that they couldn't do that, look at them do it and do it great. Like, that
Yeah.
was something as a little kid that was like really heavy on my heart. So I was also 17 at the time, so I was the youngest Marine for 2 years of my entire 4 years. So
Yeah.
that was all like at the time. I'm used to being the youngest. I'm used to that. Like, I was only so old, so I didn't really have the understanding of what that symbolized and what that
Yeah.
meant. So like later on, I was like, oh my God, like to be able to carry on the torch of all the amazing women that have empowered me to be who I am today, like to be able to do this. And also even the men that have maybe motivated me to want to show them that they're not the only ones that can do stuff.
Your bass heroes, big influences, just people who inspired you, kinds of things that you worked on. Anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely my dad was my first
Hmm.
bass influence. His name's Rodney Appleby. He's an amazing bass player to this day. Amazing, well, amongst other things, vocalist, guitar, teacher, philosopher, but like his musicality, he used to play with Rick James and Ian Gillian of Deep Purple and Chuck
Oh,
Berry.
wow.
So I've been submerged in it since really early. And so he was my number one influence growing up, and still is to this day. His playing is still unmatched. Like, I don't
Wow.
hear anybody play like him. I
Mm.
found out about Willie Weeks. I found out about Ron Carter. I found out about he loved Ray Brown. Um, I found out about Bootsy Collins. Of course, I was obsessed with just funkadelics in general. Anything funkadelics, the Ohio Players, and
Mhm.
the OJ. And I found out in the Marine Corps school, I found out about Jaco Pastorius. That was when I realized, who's also my birthday twin. So that's kind of
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
Yeah,
I was just
that is
thinking about him.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I delved into that. I found the Bella Fleck tapes that they have there that I delved into. That's when I found about Victor Wooten. Shout out to Smells Like Funk.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Shout out to Victor Wooten. But I read his book, The Lesson. I just was so submerged in the wholeness of the way that he looked at music. So that was a huge inspiration. And then I kind of got into the Yellow Jackets era. So Jimmy
Hmm.
Haslip was his
Oh, yeah.
touch and his tone and his delivery is just chef's kiss. So
Hmm.
he still is one of those ones to this day that I definitely admire. And I know that a lot of my style was developed around his playing. And
Hmm.
then as we got more, modern, Derek Hodge was a huge
Oh, yeah.
influence, was in plays with Robert Glasper Experiment, and produces on his own Common, and
Yeah.
just crazy, crazy, upright, electric, conductor. So his touch and his playing and his musical choices and feel definitely is still a huge influence.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Thundercat, I found him and I was just like so in love. I mean, nothing I could ever emulate, but it was just so nice to hear that energy going out
Yeah.
and just to like try to tap into like that just going offness. Like I love it.
Yeah.
And Mono Neon,
Yeah.
amazing inspiration. I mean, unmatched bass player. I could keep going.
Yeah, we could, I mean, this is a jazz magazine. We can, geek out about anything really. Um, your gear. So like what I see you got the GK amp behind you. Um, and you were playing at the Doechii show, you were playing I believe, and I saw something on Instagram too, something called an F bass. That's it.
There she
That's the
is.
one. All
There
right.
she is.
So do you play their instruments exclusively, or do you play a bunch of different ones, or?
It depends on what's available, depending on the gig. I brought that to the show. I risked it all, flying,
Oh,
risking it, just praying that I can get it overhead. And I
yeah.
did.
Wow.
There and back, thankfully, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But a lot of times because of that, like I've never traveled with that bass in that type of situation. I always will like have something there for me when I get there. I'll
Hmm.
bring some strings. I'll bring so I play, previous to Fender, I was working with, previous to F bass, I was working with Fender.
Hmm.
And so I have them a lot of times on backline, um, because they're so reliable, they're so consistent. You can find them. Um, it's hard to have a terrible one. So
Like a precision.
yeah, I prefer P bass, but I like J basses too. I mean, um, I'll, the tone is in the hand, so
Yeah.
I'll take them both.
Yeah.
I work with GK as well on the road. Every time they're pretty much all over, so that's amazing that they're available.
Hmm.
I have DR strings. I like to use my Black Beauties.
You referred in another interview to some original music that you were working on,
Yeah.
and you didn't say much more about it, so I thought I'd press you on a little bit, and just whatever stage it happens to be at, that's not important. But if you want to talk about like the nature of it, the aesthetic that you're going for, anything else that feels shareable at the moment.
I just found myself having music that was just in there, and I was just like, "This sounds." I think I like it, and I think I'm a harsh judge. So if I like it, then somebody else might like it. So let me just get it out, put it on the voice memo. Then I'm like, put it into the program. I'm like, all right, this is all right. I've got to work with some producers, so
Hmm.
it's been a slow process. But the vibe of it, I would definitely say I wanted the music to be initially instrumental, so that I'm not necessarily dictating the mindset of where people are going. My music definitely initially is instrumental, but I have like some interviews going over stuff that I've like chopped up and cut up, some themes, like a chorus of a theme or like a repeating type of phrase, like kind of like how Thundercat did with like Daylight, like just as an example, like,
Mm.
just music and a phrase, like, and then play, take you on a journey. You just feel good being in it.
Yeah.
And hopefully it just feels heartfelt, because I really don't make music unless I really like am feeling it, which is some of the reasons why it's been so slow as well. But so hopefully that's going to translate when I get it out this
Yeah.
year.
So this year, you're looking at this year.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely
Nice.
looking for sooner than later. The first one by like the end of winter. So like drop something every season this
I
year is
see.
kind of my
I
goal.
see. So like singles going through
Yeah,
the,
for now, and then
yeah.
compile like a EP at the end of the year, and then
Right.
next year continue doing the same, and then from those songs compile it out an
Right.
album. This one I really wanted to be a lot, just pretty much myself. I mean, I've had help, like I said, production wise,
Hmm.
because that's still something that is such a special skill. Like, just because I'm generally okay at it, there's like I'm not that person. Like my expertise is definitely bass, but in terms of the music itself, it's all just been just me.
All right. It's really great to talk to you, Zuri. Thanks so much for joining us, and good luck to you in 2025.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.